Spices have been prized for their diverse flavors and potent scents for centuries, but few people know that they were once the currency of a whole kingdom. The Dutch East India Company, often known as the VOC, became one of the world's wealthiest and most powerful corporations, partly because they controlled the spice trade. From the humble beginnings on Banda to the stately halls of Europe, the tale of the Dutch East India Company's dominance of the spice trade is fascinating. So follow me as I take you back to the days of Dutch colonization and the spice trade. It would be difficult to exaggerate the importance of spices to civilization. Spices were loved not just for their flavor, but also as a preservative. Because of their high value, spices were frequently exchanged for cash throughout the Middle Ages. However, the New World's discovery had a far-reaching effect on the spice market. The discovery of the Americas greatly impacted the spice trade since it led to the introduction of new spices to Europe, such as vanilla and chili. The abundance of silver and gold in the Americas allowed European monarchies to import spices from the East. They never failed to amaze us. One European nation that understood the significance of the spice trade early was the Dutch. To facilitate commerce with the East Indies, the Dutch founded the VOC in 1602. The VOC swiftly became the industry standard-bearer for various spices, including nutmeg, mace, and cloves. The VOC's monopoly on the spice trade allowed it to grow into one of the world's wealthiest and most influential corporations. Establishing commercial stations and plantations in the East Indies contributed to the VOC's expansion. The Dutch set up these outposts to monitor the spice trade and safeguard their economic interests. The VOC's plan all along had been to centralize spice manufacturing so that they could dictate the market price and supply in Europe. The VOC managed to corner the market on spices by regulating their cultivation, distribution, and retail. In the 17th century, the spice trade was dominated by the Dutch East India Company, or VOC, but maintaining control proved difficult. European nations like the English and the Portuguese wanted in on the lucrative spice trade the VOC had cornered. The Dutch-Portuguese War of the early 1600s was one result of these tensions. The VOC was instrumental in colonizing South Africa and establishing commercial ports and plantations in the East Indies. As a waypoint for ships heading to and from Asia, they set up shops at the Cape of Good Hope in 1652. In addition to establishing a lucrative trade in ivory and enslaved people, the VOC's monopoly on the spice trade allowed them to provide essential goods to the colony. The Dutch East India Company, also known as VOC monopolization of the spice trade, had far-reaching consequences for East Asian and European economies and cultures. The natives of the East Indies were enslaved and mistreated so that Europeans may enjoy new flavors like pepper and cinnamon. As expected, the VOC demonstrated remarkable empathy for the nutmeg. Nutmeg was formerly a rare and costly spice in Europe. Since nutmeg could only be farmed on the island of Banda, the VOC had no choice but to become the dominant player in the nutmeg trade. Due to VOC monopolization of production and distribution, nutmeg prices have skyrocketed. Since the VOC had a monopoly on nutmeg, they could dictate its price across Europe. The Dutch spice trade monopoly held by the VOC was a significant factor in the success of Dutch colonization. Because of the profitable spice trade, the VOC established colonies in the East Indies and expanded its sphere of influence. The Dutch established a colonial empire in the East Indies through trading outposts, plantations, and forts. The VOC's success in establishing a monopoly on the spice trade was critical in expanding the Dutch worldwide empire. From prehistoric times to the present, spices have been integral to human culture. The Dutch East India Company became one of the world's wealthiest and most powerful corporations in the 17th century due to its monopoly on the spice trade. This development had far-reaching consequences for the economies and cultures of both the East Indies and Europe. The legacy of the VOC is irrefutable. It altered the course of history and left an unfading mark on the modern world. I appreciate you coming along on this historical adventure with me, and I hope you've come to recognize the importance of spices in forming our modern world. For more exciting videos like this, stay tuned.